Hello and welcome to Pro Wrestling 101. I am your co-host JP John Poz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. And of course, we are joined with the star of the show, the former ECW World Heavyweight Champion, the former ECW World Tag Team Champion, the multiple time WWF Hardcore Champion, Mr. Just Incredible PJ Plago. PJ, how are you doing today, sir?
I am doing fantastic, John. How are you, brother?
Doing pretty good. Can't really
Good.
complain. It's kind of been nice weather-wise. It's not too hot,
Yeah.
not too cold. It's kind of perfectly in the middle. Maybe shorts and a sweatshirt, or light up top, or jeans. It's
Yeah.
been very comfortable out there. It's been very nice.
Yeah. Can't complain for Northeast. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it as well. Really cool.
Now, today on the show, obviously, Pro Wrestling 101, I kind of like to pick your brain about so many different topics and so many different things because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you're like a hidden gem or a gold mine as far as psychology and wrestling history and what to do and how to do it. So you are the perfect guy to ask this. And I want to talk about heels and baby faces. And I
Okay.
kind of wanted to first bring up something that I just thought was funny that Cody Rhodes said. He said, "Oh, that's old trope. That's old hat. That's an old
Right.
trope we don't do anymore." Blah, blah, blah. I beg to differ. I think it's very
Yeah.
still important and is very big in wrestling that you have heels and baby faces. So, as far as you're concerned, is heels and baby faces dead, or is that definitely an important thing we still need?
In my opinion, it is in the way they produce television and a couple of others. It is the way they do it. They feel it is. And there are exceptions, of course, to every rule. I don't feel that that change is not good at times, but traditionally, wrestling is not supposed to be difficult. And I know they try to do multi-layered things there, where it's not a clear-cut black and white babyface heel. But look, to me, a babyface and a good heel, quite frankly. I mean, if you watch a movie of any kind, especially of the action genre, you have a clear-cut babyface and a clear-cut heel. And I think, it's almost like bubblegum pop, bubblegum rock. It's like that, very easy to understand. But hell, who couldn't resist a good Hulk Hogan versus, Iron Sheik when all that stuff was going on politically? I mean, you
Mhm.
had a clear cut, charismatic babyface on the rise who, loved America, mom, apple pie, the whole thing. And then you had the polar opposite, who was a sadistic, heel, foreigner, everything that we were against at the time with Iraq and stuff. So, I still think there's a room for a good heel and babyface. And quite frankly, I think statistically, the biggest money that has been drawn in this business has been when you have a good heel and a good baby face. I think it's something that everyone could understand. And again, this is pro wrestling we're talking about. We're not talking about a Martin Scorsese movie
Mhm.
or some deep form of art. We're talking about good, clean pro wrestling fun. And I think that's best served up when you don't have to think too much. You just get invested in those characters. And usually, man, it's what that is. It's that heel and baby face. Because look, you can get into all kinds of subtleties about characters, but in pro wrestling, statistically, we've seen just through our own the eye test, that they're not always that good at writing complex characters. Sometimes they intend for it to be something that it simply is not. They don't necessarily put their ideas so clearly onto the screen, because that's not something that you write week to week like pro wrestling. That is something that is developed over time and wrestling is basically shot live. So, I mean, doing it in a movie is where you have multi-layered characters is much different than shooting it on a live basis as pro wrestling is. So I still think that there is a lot of good that could come from a good heel and a good baby face.
Totally agree. And even if you go back to the Attitude Era, the shades of gray and
Sure.
things like that, you had, I know Austin would cheat and do it differently, but he was clearly the babyface going
Sure.
against the heel boss who was an asshole. So, I mean, you could do shades of gray, right? But it still works. You need a heel and a babyface.
Of course, and just because I say the word babyface doesn't mean that he cannot have, he can't be a badass. That word has changed and evolved throughout the days and the times we're talking about. But yeah, it doesn't mean you have to be, play by the rules, goody two shoes kind of guy. But you have to define clearly at times what is good and what you want to root for and what is bad. It's just look, it's we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to put on a good show and entertain. And I think look, even in basketball, there are times where the media and the announcers and whoever's running the show will have their narrative of, well, these are the bad guys, they play dirty, or this, the unfavorable group, and then you have the babyface group where they may be the underdogs and fighting for their first championship and from behind. And that's just a classic tale that all Americans, and quite frankly all a lot of people that like this stuff all around the world. So it's just a classic story, and I think sometimes we try to do so many different things that we forget that it's really not that hard. You know what I mean? We try to go in too many different directions at times.
I feel like AEW, especially Cody, saying you only heels and babyface. He is clearly the babyface, and let's say Brody Lee, who he's feuding with for the last few 6 weeks or whatever it was, clearly the heel, right? I mean, he's saying that, but he's not showing it on TV. He's being completely different than what he's actually saying in interviews.
He is. You're absolutely right. But this is what I mean again about pro wrestling. But there are times in his presentations, in his matches, etc., he's kind of going in all these mixed directions where he's doing things that are quite opposite of a babyface, but he's still being booked as a babyface. So just because, like the Young Bucks, they're super kicking people for no reason.
Yep.
Okay, why? What's the, you know what I mean? So they're not, they're supposed to be, they're being booked as baby faces, but they're doing these weird kind of heelish things. So to me, it just looks like a mishmash. It's all over the place. And I shouldn't have to work overtime to try to dig through and understand why. I don't, WWE does one thing very well. If it's a little a shrug or a sideways look from a performer, or some dissension in the ranks, they'll replay it over and over again, and they'll make sure that that point is really brought to light. Whereas in other companies, it's not so well done. And I think that's where they lose people, because 9 times out of 10, when you're watching a 2-hour show, people are going to go to the bathroom, go to make a sandwich or some popcorn, whatever, get a drink, and they're going to miss those little subtleties. And if you don't replay them and really try to burn that idea into their head, they're going to miss the mark. So I think that they're trying to be, they're trying to book that sort of gray area, but they're not doing it in a way that's, again, it takes a lot of, it's like you don't have a chance to put up a storyboard like you're working on The Walking Dead and over time really get to do these things. You're going week to week, and a lot of times you're throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. So in pro wrestling, that's really taking a big chance. So to me, and statistically, like I said before earlier, the proof is in the pudding. The most money drawn is usually with a good heel and a good babyface storyline up top. And again, it's wrestling's eclectic. It should be a little bit of everything, but I think we see that with the more athletic matches and so forth. But I think up top, you always need that sort of, even in boxing they do it. Even though boxing is supposed to be a real sport, they still will pick out someone who is less favorable. Maybe he's talked some trash in the media. So they're always trying to, even in sport, put these sides, create these sides. So I think it's important. And, I disagree. And I have for always, and, will believe that heels and baby faces to me is simple, proven, and it works.
Yeah, and that Young Bucks thing, I was to get definitely had a note to ask
Makes
you
no
about that.
sense, bro.
I was
Makes no
so
sense to me.
confused.
Yeah.
So are they faces? Are they heels? Why are they kicking Tony Schiavone for no reason? Like, what was that all
And,
about?
and I don't mind that they're doing the kicking of the cameraman and Shivani and whoever else gets in their way, but there's like no explanation and there's no reason. Like, how would I have it so bad? Because they always try to incorporate some shoot stuff. Look, everybody knows that the Young Bucks are executive vice presidents in AEW. So, oh, what are you so upset about? You got a great gig in AEW, running the show. Oh, what are you upset? Really? It
Right.
doesn't make any sense. There is nothing, and they haven't even slightly addressed it to the public. So I know what their intentions are, but they're not doing a good job of relaying it to, and Russo says this all the time, and I agree with him, they're not relaying it to the regular fan, because the AEW faithful will watch AEW Dark, and they'll go on the sheets and go to websites and really try to get every point that those guys are trying to make. But for people that are just tuning in to watch good wrestling, they're like, what the hell am I seeing here? So I think it confuses and off puts a lot of fans.
There's got to be, I guess, being the Elite YouTube show. I don't watch that. I don't watch
I
Dark.
don't
So it's
either.
like,
No.
it's like confusing. Like, so what's going on with these guys? But it's almost like they're not really heels, but they're not really baby faces. But then they do the thing where they pull out the money, which has got to be some sort of shoot element, telling people that
Right.
they're rich and they have money. Like, oh, we
Right.
don't care about fines. It's got to be something like that. But in essence, so they're being this, quote unquote heelish acting team or whatever they're babyish being, but they want to feud with the
Right.
heel tag team champions, FTR.
Ex-
I'm confused. It makes no sense.
exactly. That's what I said earlier. Kind of. It's like they're being booked, as baby faces, but they're portraying something different. And look, in life, I think everybody wants to be a good guy, or most people, I think, would in life want to be perceived
Yep.
as a good man, as a likable dude. And and to be a bad guy, to be a heel, they have to show that they're bad people, that they're willing to cut somebody off at the legs and to cheat and to swindle. I mean, it really is. It's bringing it back to what happens in life. That scumbag at work that's going to throw you under the bus, and whatever is. You know what I mean? It's and so what are the Young Bucks? Good dudes, but they're just being little bitches, kicking people around for no reason. They're bullies. Like, like actors would say all the time, what's my motivation? What's their motivation? And I think they have to make that clear in order for anybody to really care about the storyline. And I think that's what lacks. And and the way they're being booked as well. You mentioned that the way they're being booked against heel opponents, and also this tag thing that they're doing, this four-way tag to see who wrestles FTR. We all know it's going to be the Young Bucks,
Yep.
and we all know that's, again, they're booking them babyface and heel, although they're acting as if they're all over the place, that they're heels. So again, it's just confusing to me, and that's when you get people, like, it's real easy to turn the channel, and instead of getting something where the ball is rolling and fans are really invested in these guys, because really, I haven't seen a reason to really get behind a lot of the guys there, other than Jericho, because he's well known and we've all seen his prior work. But and Cody, I love Cody. I like his entrance. I like what he does there. But I feel like in AEW, there's, I don't know, maybe a lot of room to wiggle for these performers. And I think a lot of them lack the experience, like a WWE style experience, to really go out and get that for themselves. I think they're just fishing, and right now is not a good time to be experimental. Now's the time. I mean, they're 1 year on TNT. Now is the time to really turn it up and to bring out a really solid product that's not hard to understand, that's fun to watch, and that, like, I want to tune in next week. Like, that's one thing that they lack, is some kind of cliffhanger. Like, I used to love the old UWF cliffhanger shows where they'd go off the air in a situation where you didn't know what was going to happen, who was going to win, what was going to, so it was like, we got to go, we're out of time, tune in next week. And then you'd almost start the show with the blowout from what happened last week. And I think that urgency is missing. It's almost like, well, we have this match and that match. They're investing too much time, in my opinion, into these said matches that really aren't that exciting, because in some form or fashion we've seen everybody wrestle each other, so there's no like dream match on that entire roster already. And that's what you get when you have, when you're throwing main events away every week. So what do you really do? Like, I think they're relying on fans that enjoy watching 20-minute matches, and that's pretty much it. It's a very odd way of booking, and they lack a lot of forward thinking and formatting. Because again, you could miss 1 week of AEW Dynamite and really not be any worse for wear on where the storylines have gone.
Yeah,
Really.
very true. And I think even talking about like heels and faces and this and that, even Brandy to a certain extent, like her character kind of doesn't make sense.
Sure.
Is she a heel? Is she a face? Sometimes she does heel things, but then she's with Dustin, who's obviously he's a face, but her husband's a baby face. So that's even confusing because she had a doll and was talking about how the doll was more popular than the roster and all this
Right.
other, like very heelish stuff. So it's almost like they don't know where they're going, I guess.
Yeah, I really feel that. And for Brandy, for a long time, she was being brought out as a heel. Wasn't she managing Awesome Kong,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken? And that was a heel role. And then she was off TV for maybe a week or two, and then she's coming out as a big baby face. So, and also, but the worry I have there, and it really, I think, comes to fruition on Heels and Baby Faces, is it takes a lot to get fans to really get behind someone, especially someone that they haven't been behind before. You can go out there and rah and do that white meat baby face thing, but it doesn't work now, especially when there are no fans in the arenas. We're working in wicked different times than we ever have, so we really don't have a gauge to measure who's really over. I don't have a breakdown of the numbers, but I never thought that those breakdowns were all that accurate. But it's just there's nobody that has gotten a little bit of steam underneath them. Like they were trying to do it with Lance Archer. All they've done is his two. I thought he was a great commodity. His two biggest matches, against Cody and against Moxley, and he's done the job twice. So again, to me, I know they're trying to, not make the biggest deal out of it, but the reality is fans are going to look at it and be like, well, he's done the job twice, and now what? He's only good. He's good enough to beat a bunch of scrubs, but he's not good enough to beat the main talent.
Yep.
So they really have to start focusing on who is going to be the guy. Like, I thought Kenny Omega was going to be the guy.
Me too.
He was going to be the big baby face, the big name of the company. That hasn't been the case. And Moxley, although he's done a great job of performing in wrestling, I'm not criticizing him in that aspect. His character hasn't it hasn't evolved in any way. They're not, again, they're not doing any, like, if you've seen Moxley 1 week, you've seen them a second week, nothing really changes. And there's only so much he could do too, because there, without assistance from the company and storylines that people could really sink their teeth into, that's not going to change. Putting on 2 hours worth of wrestling is pretty much what they do. It's like, it's just too much wrestling, not enough storytelling. And I'm not trying to go off subject because we're talking about heels and baby faces, but it really one thing has to do with the other, because right now they have not developed anyone. I would like to see a real killer heel come out, and they've had many opportunities. They failed with Brian Cage, who I think looks like a monster. I mean, that guy. I was just looking through Instagram and saw pictures of him in the gym. I mean, what an Adonis he is. And he's already done the job. He's already been beat. I mean, who else do you have now? The only thing I think of is maybe a Jake Hager, because he's not doing anything and he hasn't really been ruined all that much. But they have to have somebody roll through there for close, 6 months to a year, and just roll through everybody, win every match, and just be a real threat. And then finally, you need to start going back to that old fashioned stuff and build someone up so bad that you think he can beat everyone. And, and unfortunately, they just haven't established those boundaries. And again, it's going back to, the most money that wrestling has ever made is when there's a good heel champion and he's beat everybody and it looks like nobody can beat him, and then the money's in the chase. I think they made a big mistake of putting John Moxley as a babyface champion, pretty much going through everybody
Yep.
instead of the opposite, where develop a champion heel that he's just unstoppable, and then have the chase start. You know what I mean? Then you at least you
Yep.
have something to stick your teeth into, and you'll want to root for that guy to unseat the big monster heel. But again, they're just I feel they're all over the place with identifying, period, what am I watching here and how should I feel about any of these guys. Like one week it's this, and then the next, like one week Jericho's a lovable goof, then the next week he's not. So it's like, again, I just feel like everybody's out there with no sense of urgency, so it's going to be a real challenge.
Their booking of heels is just crazy. If
Yeah.
MJF wasn't good on his own for as far as mic work and stuff, he would be terribly and just brushed off the side. Because Khan has no idea how to book a heel. Like
No.
Archer, he built him up, but he beat nobody. Then he loses to two top guys, like you said. Same thing with Brody Lee. He lost to Cody, and he's lost to Moxley before. Brian Cage lost, and then you don't see him for weeks. And all of
Right.
a sudden, he just reappears, and he was beating up Darby Allin, but not really. Then Ricky Starks, terribly, terribly booked. Like you said, Jericho is kind of up and down with like the jokey stuff, and the feud with Orange Cassidy kind of just killed his
Yeah.
momentum completely. Hager, they do nothing with him. He's a monster. He's
Yep.
just there. Like they have no clue how to book a heel, and it's just crazy. And like you're mentioning Kenny Omega, what is he? A heel, a face?
Yeah.
He's been nothing. He's like a nothing, literally non-factor.
And it feels like they go around the mulberry bush to get to something. Now they have this world title tournament where it's obviously going to end up being Hangman Adam Page, another guy that they've underutilized,
Yep.
and Kenny Omega. It's gonna be those two in the finals. That's the way the brackets look, and it'll be kind of their blow off, because if you remember, there's been an issue there, which again, it's something that they don't even really mention.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're
Yep.
supposed to remember all of this stuff instead of use video packages. They have a great production team. Show packages and clips and set up the story through narration, through vignettes. And they don't do it. So obviously this is going to be their big blow off, and it's going to probably end up being Kenny Omega against John Moxley for the title at their next pay-per-view. But again, this is us, just really on the outside. We're fans looking in, and we have to decipher this instead of us being told, "Look, this is what we're going to give you," and know what we're going to give you. So yeah, it's just a very odd mix, and I think really, without having a structure that Vince McMahon has had throughout the years, and the experience and the experienced people that Vince has had throughout the years, they were not ready to do a 2-hour live show, man. It's what it's really getting down to. And again, I'm going to try to stay on topic, but it just goes to show you how hard it really is to book 2 hours live every week. It's not an easy task. And I feel like they really don't have much of a plan. They probably have an outline that is very, very sketchy and loose. And that's going to get them into trouble. And that's why I think, I'm actually surprised that they're doing the numbers that they're doing, even though I feel like they should be doing at least 1 million on a weekly basis. I'm surprised they're doing the numbers they're doing, because it's getting incredibly harder and harder to watch. And just this past week, they had that Akira Shida, who is the women's champion, wrestle for the first time in almost a month. I don't know who she is. I don't know if she's a heel or a baby face. And she's wrestling Big Swole, who, in my opinion, was really starting to become a baby face, because she had been on TV for 3 or 4 weeks, participating and winning most of her matches. Well, a couple of her matches, whatever. But what I'm saying is, it's just, let's throw these people out there, throw a finish, and establishing zero heat for anybody, both babyface and heel. So It's
Yeah, and it
crazy.
felt like for a title match that you want to build up. I know it's the women's title, maybe it's not as important in AEW, but it felt like just like a throwaway. It was like, okay, who's
Right.
the heel, who's the face, what's going on? They just like, and they constantly have that, not only with the women's division, but a lot of this stuff is just throwaway matches. Just like, man, and then you literally, let's just say you're blind to, you're not a fan of AEW, you're watching, oh, I want to watch this. Like my buddy hasn't watched wrestling really, in years. He's like, oh, I'll
Right.
try out AEW. He's like, oh, I like Cody and maybe FTR or something. Then he's like, so who's the big baby face? Who's the bad guy? Who's the guy? He had no clue like what was going on. So I was like, well, I'm a long time watcher. I've been watching AEW every week, and I don't even know. So that's not a good sign.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's scary when I do watch it. I've watched every single episode of Dynamite, and I've reviewed it. I've taken notes, and I'm worse for wear because I truly have no idea. And I'm not trying to criticize the company in any way, shape, or form. Also, nor am I trying to get a job, but I just feel that, to speak honestly, that there's an inner problem that is happening there. Because they do have guys like Tully Blanchard, Dane Malenko, Arn Anderson, Jerry Lynn, Billy Gunn, among others. I can go on and on. My feeling is that, guys like Omega, guys like the Bucks, guys like Cody, they all have their hooks in this. So they're just going to do what they want. And Russo, again, I hate always agreeing with him, but he's right a lot of the times. I don't know. Maybe that's why he has so much heat, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, he's right. And they're just getting their friends over, and they're just kind of establishing themselves for themselves. They're not really necessarily concerned with anything other than, look, we have our platform. We're going to do what we want. And, this isn't a big picture thing because Vince McMahon wouldn't allow any of this to happen. And Tony Khan, unfortunately, although he's a good businessman, certainly with the lack of experience, is not a good television writer.
Yep.
Nor should he be, really. Who's expected to do it for the first time and have it be on national television? That's unfair too. So, but nonetheless, that's a job he chose to do. And it's just, man, it's just not working. It's not working.
Now, if you look at WWE TV right now, and you look at Roman Reigns, clearly a heel,
Right.
clearly established himself. Heyman obviously is his manager, which shows you he's the heel.
Right.
It has done so well, and he has come off so good. And it's almost like one of those things that's like WWE, AEW. Not that WWE is great, but when you watch SmackDown and watch Reigns, you're like, that is a heel. That is perfection. I'm
Right.
invested in him. Hell, I was rooting for Jey Uso to come back, and I'm not not a huge fan of his, but the way it was set up, the way it was done, you were like get invested and emotionally invested. Hell, they didn't do much in that match, but it was awesome when they wrestled last month on the pay-per-view, and it was the main event. Everybody said it was great, and it was, if you really go back and watch it, they didn't do much, but they clearly established asshole heel bullying his younger cousin. It was just so well done. It's like, that is heel babyface 101, right?
And that's what storytelling is all about, is establishing that heel. And I mean, it's happened all throughout history, man. I mean, back in the day before pay-per-views, I mean, they would bring in a monster heel to WWE, or Vince Senior even is WWE, to wrestle Bruno. And at first he'd blow through jobbers in a couple of minutes, and then they'd feed him like an SD Jones. Maybe the SD Jones would get a couple of spots, but he'd still lose. And then he would get a mid Carter, you know what I mean? And it would slowly start to gain momentum as a heel. And then by the time he got to Bruno, they'd have their big showdown, and the heel has done all his bad things. And, when he got to Bruno, the heel would get disqualified or bloody up Bruno. You know what I mean? And then it's just like you kept stretching it out and building more heat. So when Bruno finally got his comeuppance, you don't have, like I said, you don't have to be the big old school corny rock and roll express baby face, but still just the way you book these guys will get fans engaged in that. And I think that's a big problem where they're not planning anything ahead. It's like everything is just done instead of this building process that they missed out on with Lance Archer, which I thought they were going to do well. Then, of course, Brian Cage was a shit show, unfortunately, because he looks
Yep.
amazing. And, the other guys, too, whoever, So
Brody
we'll
Lee.
see.
Yep.
Brody Lee. And, even though he at least beat Cody and put him out for a little bit, but they could have gone a couple of different ways with that. But nonetheless,
Yeah, definitely could have been better as far as that. Who do you think, when you just look at the grand scheme of wrestling and talking about heels and babyface stuff like that, who do you think is the best heel of all time, or maybe a couple heels? Who do you think is the best babyface of all time? If you could, maybe a few of each.
Oh, Dusty Rhodes, probably one of the best baby faces of all time. Um, Hulk Hogan
Yep.
and Stone Cold Steve Austin, probably some of the best baby faces. Hold on, I literally have the. Hold on, open the door real quick. Do you hear that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have a fire in my apartment. That's the fire alarm. I got to get the kids out of here. It's probably not a fire; it's a false alarm. But I got to clear the house. Let me hit you back in a little bit. All right.
Yeah. Yep. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
because I didn't expect that. I don't know if you're even getting it on your end, but it's distracting.
Yep. Now I can hear it. Yep.
Yeah. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Bye. So we're talking about heels and baby faces. PJ obviously has to run for a second as the fire alarm is going off in his house. Just want to mention some of the greatest heels and baby faces of all time. He mentioned Dusty, Hogan, Austin. I totally agree. And then if you go heels, you got to go Flair. Obviously, Hollywood Hulk Hogan is one of the greatest heels of all time as well. If you just throw him out there and just think about that. And as far as just crazy monster heels, you got Andre the Giant was a great monster heel, feuding with Hulk Hogan. Obviously, I mean, Macho Man played a great babyface, and he played a great heel. Going some old school guys, Superstar Billy Graham played a great heel. You have so many guys just in the history of wrestling, and current wrestling today is not really hitting the nail on the head as far as doing that. Except right now, I really, really do feel like Roman Reigns is just tearing it up, and he's just been a great heel. He's doing such a great job in the current landscape of WWE. Now, as far as some plugs, just want to mention you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. You could go to my website, tmptempire.com, for all the latest and greatest from the Two Man Power Trip of wrestling. You could also check out PJ Polacco, aka Just Incredible, on Twitter and Instagram at PJ Polacco. Hopefully, he'll have that fire under control and he'll be back on social media as soon as possible, because I don't think he'll be back in time for this, because he's, like he said, he's got to clear the house, get everybody out, get everybody back in. But I think we have a good time and a good time stamp as far as how long the episode has gone. Also, if you want to check out anything else as far as Team PT, you go to our Facebook page as well. Just type in Two Man Power Trip of Wrestling on Facebook. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us this week, and we will see you right back here next week on Pro Wrestling 101 with Justin Credible. See you next week, folks.